Thank you very much. So I don't have a product to launch. I'm here to take us on a kind of a drunken walk through technology, where we've just been and where we're going. Tech is kind of amazing. Within the last 4 or 5 years, we've gone through a lot, is the best way I could put it. I think we feel like that internally, and I'm guessing you all too. Even 2019, if we just go back to 2019, this was what I would call like the sort of the late stages of SaaS. I think if we're honest with ourselves, we'd kind of ran out of ideas. Of course, we didn't admit that. Instead, we told ourselves we discovered an amazing new technology, and whether they wanted it or not, as an industry, we rammed it down our customers' throats. I am, of course, talking about dark mode. Does everyone remember literally the most exciting thing you could do in tech would be take your UI, dip it in dark, bring it up again, and be like, ta-da! Also, it costs more money. Yeah. That was literally where we were, and I think we were in a kind of weird, ambiguous place, and then 2020 came along, and with it came you-know-who, our old friend COVID. So COVID was an interesting time in the tech industry, because the first sort of thing that happened was obviously we locked down, but no sooner did we lock down than we launched what I call the original back to the office movement, which was we created new little virtual offices, which were actually tabs in a browser like this, where you could drag your little people around and hear each other's conversations. And this is literally the sort of stuff we were building in early COVID. It got weirder. At one point, Mark Zuckerberg took to the stage and said the future was going to be this. And does anyone remember this? Like, this was fucking 2020. It was mad shit, right? Like, and you thought, like, with 2021, we're going to get to a real dose of normality of sober times. Wrong. 2021 opened with the sort of unveiling of NFTs, and I don't know if you remember this era, but people were literally buying JPEGs of rocks for hundreds of thousands, or in some cases, millions of dollars. And this was a thing we were all doing that we thought was somehow rational, and on we went, right? In our heart of hearts, we knew what was coming, and what was coming was obvious. 2022. After kind of a run that had lasted for so long, we kind of get to the top, and you're like, uh-oh, and oh no, down things went. And with it came the doom and gloom that we all know, the layoffs, the closures, the down rounds, all that negative shit. And because of that, tech was definitely in the doldrums. And then on November 30th, a lad called Sam posted a tweet that simply said chat.openai.com, and this yoke popped up. And we didn't know what the hell it was, but it was more fun than dealing with layoffs, so we started to play with it. We asked it things like, what can you do? And it was answering questions like a human would, and we're like, Jesus, that's pretty smart. And we could ask it even interesting questions. For example, did you ever wonder what building you're in? Well, here's a fun fact about this very stage I'm on. The Chemical Brothers once featured here. Probably more interesting than this. But on the back of a bull market and then followed by extreme bear market after layoffs and $1.3 million rocks and all that stuff, we went into 2023, which was, in a sense, many years in one. We used this AI tech to try out so many different types of, effectively, prototypes. 2023 was in so many ways the year of the prototype. A lot of solutions trying to find a problem to match. To give you a simple example, I don't know if we ever needed to hear a song about a customer service conference called Pioneer, but we're going to.
Welcome to Pioneer. We appreciate you here. Customer service is sometimes tragic, but together we make it magic. So don't fear, just cheer. Later we can grab a beer. Welcome to Pioneer.
Now, I'm not saying it's good. But like, that's a single sentence prompt, right? It's just mad, right? Like, I mean, I have it on my phone if anyone wants it. But there's other weird shit too, right? Like, I don't know if anyone ever needs to see a dead celebrity fashion show, but you can do that too, right? Like, all of this mad stuff is possible now. And like, why did someone do this? I don't know. What could it be used for? None of that matters right now. It's 2023, right? We're just doing shit and finding out what's going to happen, right? And then in a slightly more useful way, there's other tech that, like OpenAI demo this one, where like you could, like, say, sketch out a website, and you could basically take a photo of that, send it to ChatGPT, and say, please build me this, and ChatGPT would, without question, just build out the HTML and build your website. And we're like, Jesus, that is interesting. Now, it wasn't at the time, I mean, no one's cancelling their Jira subscription thinking this is the future of software development, right? But it was definitely interesting that this stuff was starting to get possible. The other thing I think that happened a lot was people were forced, or like, Fortune 500 companies specifically were told, we need to be seen to be adopting AI, just do something, buy some AI shit, we need to put it into the next press release. And it produced a lot of what's called AI slop. So you can imagine how, like, you could say something like, hey, we should do graphics for our new restaurant menu where we serve duck and where we serve squid. And sure enough, you'll get some damn weird graphics, right? And you look at this, and this is what's kind of become known as AI slop, just the like massive outpouring of stuff that people are not really sure what's useful for. The other thing that we saw a lot of in this period was what we call the sort of thin wrapper idea. It was when, like, some hot new product gets really popular and they're charging $9 a month for doing something, and then you kind of look at it and you scratch and sniff a bit at this breakthrough and you're like, it's actually just ChatGPT again, isn't it? And this was a very kind of common thing. But amidst all of this sort of 2023 drama, something very real was happening, right? We were actually learning how to build with LLMs. We were learning what it would look like to sort of build in non-deterministic ways. Like, a lot of these projects you start and you don't even know if it's possible. We were finding out, like, what's an actual real problem that's addressable? And customers themselves were starting to make a space in their life for the idea that something could be generated. And there were some, towards the tail end of the year, there were some interesting pointers to where we might go. One example I really like is homework, right? There's a famous educational study by a guy called Benjamin Bloom who basically says, in a nutshell, being taught by an expert in your field, direct one-to-one, outperforms traditional education by 2 standard deviations. It's called Bloom's 2 sigma effect. Of course, that's not a useful finding, because who the hell can afford to do that? We could never possibly do that, except for now we can, right? We can actually expose this type of technology to people and have really, really great tuition, and it's competing with nothing. The alternative wasn't to have a full-time lecturer helping your students learn, right? So all these things started to become interesting. Another one I liked, because I used it a bit, was interior design, right? Again, you can literally send a photo of a room that you're considering renovating, definitely considering in this case, and you can ask for like different ideas for how you get, where could the room go? And you can generate lots of ideas. Now, none of these designs are perfect, and I don't think an interior designer is about to be put out of sort of work here, but what I can do is use it to explore a solution space. And just as an interesting fact, Intercom.com, our website, the way the design team worked in this is they actually did use a lot of generative art to explore the solution space, and then as they converged, they hired actual artists and painters to deliver the final graphics. I think that's a really interesting way to partner with this technology. I think you'll see more of that. And then a personal use case for me is I have a good imagination, but you know what kids are like, you run out of stories very quickly. Literally, I give this prompt to a product, and it will, give it all the context it needs, and it pops out a fully illustrated storybook, literally straight out of my daughter's imagination, which is just something that isn't possible. Well, wasn't possible. I know we used to have like fill in the blank story stuff when we were kids, but this is like breakthrough stuff. So that was all consumer stuff. In our sort of B2B land, it wasn't like we weren't selling children's storybooks, right? Like if you're doing project management software or ticket tracking or something like that, what's in it for us? Well, the first wave of AI that we saw was what I call the sort of sprinklings of AI, right? These buttons started to appear in all our products. And what they promised to do was take a little task that somebody has to do and simplify it or speed it up or do it for them. And that was the sort of beginning of, this stuff might be valuable. And that brings us roughly to 2024, where we are today. And the shift that we're seeing happen in software, but honestly in society too, is this shift from it's a transition from software as a service, which is where we've spent most of our careers, to what's now called like service as a software, right? You don't sell seats to people to put humans in those seats to use the product to do the job. You sell the product that does the job. You're selling work now. And that's the transition we're going to see happen in lots of places in software. And another way of putting that is that all this AI stuff, this is getting real. Or, as I say internally a lot, shit is actually getting real. Now, That's not to say that it's smooth sailing from here onwards. It won't be, right? It won't be. We are actually probably or possibly close to like the sort of apex of the hype curve. I don't know if you're familiar with these sort of hype curve things, but basically when something new comes out, everyone thinks it's the best thing in the world, then they decide it's not, and then they decide it eventually actually was pretty cool all over again. We're somewhere up here, right? Which means, what are we going to see in the next while? Two things I think you're going to see. A lot of people questioning the value, a lot of like, hard, maybe skeptical, but sometimes important questions asked. So for example, Goldman Sachs produced this report saying, is there really just too much spend and too little benefit here? These are legitimate questions, right? Because, unthinkable amounts of money have been thrown into this space. Like, tens or hundreds of billions have been thrown in here. Most of it won't be seen again. Now, when I say won't be seen again, NVIDIA are pocketing it, to be clear, they're definitely seeing it again. But for a lot of the VCs, won't be seeing that money back, right? That's the nature of startups. Most of them fail, and then some of them are smash hits. So I think we should expect that. But secondly, there will be effectively just the death of a lot of these companies. Those thin wrappers will go away. That experimental budget will dry up. People will generally start to realize that like these things didn't work, never worked, aren't useful, or were solutions chasing problems. And we'll see a lot of that disappear. The other thing we should expect is that a lot of founders who had a kind of failing company have decided to, as a last-ditch sort of gamble, be like, let's rebrand it as an AI company and see if that works. And that won't work either, right? And I think that a lot of this is just normal. This is what we call the sort of creative destruction period. We've gone through a massive change in tech. Something massively new has happened, and because of that, we should expect a lot of turbulence, right? It's like as if someone's just ripped up the tablecloth and we need to reset the table entirely. And it's not the case that just because you have an idea for a good AI product and you can ship it, that you're going to somehow be a part of this new wave. There's too many things changing. The technology capabilities is changing, but also we don't yet know what the right shape of solution is. And this became obvious to me just earlier this year in June. Within 1 week, I got 3 different pitches. On a Monday morning, so I do a little bit of angel investing. On a Monday morning, someone pitched me a product that said basically, here's what we do, Des. We help SDRs, which are sales development representatives. They're the people who effectively cold email trying to generate business. We help them write outbound emails. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I could see how that would be useful. I needed to check if it wasn't a thin wrapper, if it was actually something useful, but it generally sounded useful. On the Wednesday, I was still mulling it over, and I got another pitch, which was we actually just take a list of the emails needed to hit, and we'll write the emails entirely, and we'll own the sending, and we'll do it all from there. And I was like, oh, that's a better idea. And initially what was obvious to me was, if this thing works, then we don't need this thing. And I was, that's interesting. So maybe that's the actual winner in the space here. So I kind of had the checkbook out, ready to dance. And then Friday, a third email comes in, which is actually, we're going to just replace your SDR team. You just tell us what type of customers you want to reach. We'll work out everything else. We're going to work out how to get to them, what their email address is. We'll send the emails. We'll schedule the appointments, set up the sales team. We're going to do it all. And I was like, really only one of these things is going to work right now. This thing is easier to build and might have initial success because of that. You can put that in market pretty quickly. This thing is a monster, but if you can do it, it's clearly going to dominate the other two. And this is what I mean by the shape of the solution that we're building in AI. We have to work out, maybe I'll speak in more abstract terms, we have to work out, are we building a tool that helps the human do a job, help them do a single task, summarize, generate, or whatever, or are we taking a lump of work off the humans and saying, hey, how about we'll just do all that and you carry on with the other stuff? Or are we looking at org level things and saying, we're just going to do all that and you don't ever have to worry about it? And what that means is we're going to have to take big old massive products that we all use, whether it's project management or whether it's expense tracking, finance, you name it, we're going to have to decompose them into all of the important tasks that actually happen there. And for every given task or workflow that's in there, we have to ask questions like, can this be done and then verified by humans? This is the human in the loop thing of yep, that's correct. Or can it be heavily augmented, like a co-pilot style thing where it's we'll help you do most of the work? Or can we do it completely, as in you're never going to think about this any more than you think about where your electricity comes from or whatever, right? It's just gone. Or if we can't do any of that, can we even just apply some sprinkles of AI where hey, this might be a purely creative thing and maybe we can just help by helping the brainstorm or something like that. And generally, I think when we're finished doing all this, we have to ask, what do the future products look like? And most importantly, what actually changes? Generally speaking, a product is a product in a business is a combination of things. It's a product, who buys it, who uses it, how do you charge for it, etc. Every one of these things will change in a post-AI world. What the product actually says it does, is it work or is it cease to do work? Who uses the product will change. Who's buying the product? Often the economic buyer of like AI products might actually be the head of operations, the head of finance. It's like, it might not always be the traditional end user. The pricing will change. So Paul spoke earlier about like our outcome-based pricing. You're selling work, so you should probably charge to the work versus charge to the seat. The performance. In the future, the questions people will be asking is, how good is your agent at resolving conversations or something like that? The measure is not like, do you have the best UI? Do you have the nicest integrations? It's going to shift a bit. And a lot more of these things will change, right? The dominoes kind of all sort of fall, and the whole landscape is going to get rewritten in that period. Now, this will happen everywhere, but it's not going to happen immediately. It'll happen to all industries, but like a lot of people say AI is as big as the internet or cloud or mobile or something like that, right? My preferred current metaphor is actually it's about as big as electricity. Which sounds grandiose, but here's the parallel that I like. Electricity didn't happen overnight, right? 1879, Edison filed a patent for the light bulb. 1881, in the UK, you had the first demo of electricity here in the country. 1882, the first power station was built here. They also did a funny thing, which has a weird parallel to today. They passed the Electricity Act. And the Electricity Act, contrary to what it might sound like, made sure that no one used electricity, right? It was the original bureaucracy back then. It was like illegal to make, illegal to sell. Councils couldn't do their own thing. It took 1892, they unwound all of the bureaucracy and said, you know what, people can make and sell electricity, it's fine. It was the 1900s before things like London lit up, right? And then the second order effects, well, the 9 to 5 that we all know and love, that came from the fact that electricity existed. We had to follow the sun before that, right? And then, late night shopping and just, shift work. All of these things were only possible because of the rollout of electricity. That's the sort of second and perhaps third order effects from one dude filing a patent for a light bulb in 1879. I think that's, so like, I say all this to say, when you go back to your offices like next week and it's not all, the world isn't all changed, it doesn't mean I'm wrong, I'm just kind of calling it a little bit early, that's all. We're not even 2 years into AI, not even 2 years into it, right? And look at what's been changing and look at what is changing. We're still in this lighting up stage. We're still kind of illuminating the streets and wondering what comes next. But it is pretty clear what's ahead. So let's talk about some examples of things we're going to see. Earlier I showed you an example of, say, sketching a napkin and turning it into a little bit of code or whatever. This is a product called create.xyz. You literally give it a text description of an app that you would like to build, and you say which model you'd like to build it with, and you say go. And it will go and build, start to finish, an idea for a movie, in this case a movie recommend engine AI, that actually works. That's live today. You can literally go from idea to working prototype like that. Does anyone think software engineering is going to be the same in the future? It definitely won't be. Another, perhaps even more boring industry, legal. So Harvey is a tool that literally takes what used to take months of time to do analysis, legal docs, see what's compliant with what sort of follow-on queries must you file, etc. It reduces it to minutes, from months to minutes. And does anyone think law will be the same on the far side of this? And perhaps more optimistically, in medicine, tools like AI Doc literally monitor every single scan that comes into a hospital and dynamically order them and prioritize them to make sure that, that the time spent in the hospital is spent as efficiently as possible, ultimately delivering far better outcomes. These are all the sort of examples of how this will change. It's not going to be live today. The future is here, but it is not evenly distributed yet. So what does this mean for support? What's this mean for us? Well, it's reasonable for us to wonder, what the hell does this mean for jobs? What does this mean for employment? What does this mean for our industry? Does my role change? Does my title change? Do I still exist? All that sort of stuff. Just one parallel I'll draw that I think is interesting to look at. When the spreadsheet was released in 1979, the first spreadsheet was called VisiCalc. The big lament complaint at the time was the spreadsheet's going to kill jobs. And it actually did. Killed jobs. No denying that. Bookkeepers, accounting clerks, they went down, and they've gone down further since. But that's not the full story, and it never ever is, right? Actually, it made jobs. A lot more other jobs, higher order jobs, sharper career trajectory jobs, higher paying jobs came up as a result of this. And that's the sort of thing that I suspect I know we've consistently seen this, and I suspect we'll continue to see it in our world and thus in our industry. So what's it mean for customer service again? Well, Paul showed earlier that we've been moving through the sort of gears, if you like, right? We went from like no automation to some automation, deterministic. We've gone effectively like to, we've been playing this game of like, AI bot, if you like, where we went from nothing to programmable, informational, dynamic or personal, action-based. And there's a lot more to come, right? There's a lot more to come in this space. But it won't even stop at that, right? There'll be proactive bots that get to know you, bots that ask your name and then engage you like that, bots that spot when you're doing something wrong and make sure you do something right. All of this stuff will be obvious, right? We shouldn't assume that just because a customer is silent, they're happy. They could be very, very frustrated, but just not bothering to contact support. You can engage them. And the bots will break out of these windows. They'll break out of chats. We could see video bots. We could see voice bots, right? These things are all they're all on the horizon. In some cases in Intercom, we have demos of pieces of this. But like, it's inevitable that whatever we want to happen here will happen, right? I'm not saying the future involves like this. Like, you're going to see Constantina from Synthesia earlier. Those 3D avatars, that's all here today. If we don't have 3D animated avatars providing one-to-one customer support and products, it's no longer because we can't do it. It might be because we don't want to, or but it's not a technical issue anymore. And the other thing that I think is going to change businesses forever is the ability to analyze so much conversation. We've never seen what a business looks like when it can listen to every single thing it's ever heard. It can analyze everything, and from it, it can build like models of what's happening, where the concerns are. It used to be the case that customer feedback was a game of triage and like you do your best stab at it. Imagine listening to literally everything, right? That's going to change how businesses understand their customer in a really, really deep way. So let me just wrap up with a few thoughts here. Firstly, this is a time of change for customer service, a time of immense change. And like Paul and Owen and Franco, I'm immensely grateful for you all to be joining us on this. One thing we all have in common here is that our industry, what we do, is going through a massive change. For us, it was and is existential questions about the future of what AI-first customer support software looks like. And for you, it's questions about what does customer support look like in this new world. Times of change are really scary. And there's a temptation, specifically often I find in our industry, but also outside it, to be skeptical or cynical or hesitant or resistant. And it's not new. Did you know, for example, the typewriter was once blamed for causing wars? Right? These are things that happen, right? Did you know no sooner had we built cars than we had a back to the horse movement, right? People are the original degrowthers of their time, if you like, right? And did you know that for as long as we've had news about the machines taking away the jobs. This is a story as old as time, but employment only has ever gone one way. We keep innovating and we keep employing. The tech gets better, the jobs get better. And we should believe in us from that point of view. So let's be optimistic. The big changes will mean massive improvements, as long as we're willing to be learners. I love this quote by Eric Hoffer, who says that, in times of change, the learners inherit the earth, while those who believe themselves supposedly learned will find themselves perfectly prepared for a world that just simply no longer exists. If you came out here today, it's because you're actually keen to learn. And in that regard, this next generation of customer service is yours to write. As for us, our motivation is basically what it's been since 2011, since we started. We want to make a better internet. We want to make it a great place to be a customer. We want to make it a great place to run a business. That's what we're passionate about. And I think when you all go back to your roles, that's what you're passionate about doing for your companies too. This time of change, this era, this is our chance to sort of write the next chapter of customer service. We at Intercom are really, really excited to write that chapter with you. And I want to say thank you all for coming out today. And that's all I have to say. Thanks very much.